Hey everyone, a Monday night reaction Browns thoughts here. Browns lose 41-32 to fall to 3-9 on the season. They lose to the Denver Broncos. But what a wildly entertaining game this was. Jameis Winston almost throws for 500 yards, but he has 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Listen, I'm just glad that this team actually looks competent offensively because this team looked inept for most of this season offensively until Jameis Winston came in there and started at quarterback. Like, this team could not move the ball. They were historically bad offensively until Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles against the Cincinnati Bengals. And now, like, this is their first loss this season scoring more than 20 points. First loss this season. They've only scored 20 points 4 times this season. And they're 3-1 now. So, yeah, there was the New Orleans game that got away from them, and then, hey, you know, the New Orleans lineage, Sean Payton here, Will Lutz, like some of the New Orleans lineage goes to Denver, and the Broncos win 41-32 with 2 pick sixes. Listen, it wasn't the finest hour for the Browns defense. Bo Nix, yes, he has 2 interceptions in this game, but he throws for 294 yards. They gave up 100 yards rushing. It wasn't pretty for most of this thing. But listen, the takeaway for me is if you're the Browns, you have a decision to make. I saw some people on the internet basically saying, yeah, you can't win with this style of play with Jameis Winston. And I was like, well, what the hell did you call last year? Joe Flacco threw a bunch of I think he had like 13 touchdowns and 8 interceptions last year. You throw for a bunch of yards in this thing. Like, yeah, do they need to figure out how to run the ball better? Yeah. They need. I think what they need to look at in this draft is playmakers potentially. Even though Jerry Jeudy had one of his best nights of his career in a revenge game, goes 9 for 235 and a touchdown, almost single-handedly helped me win my fantasy game. But then the Broncos defense I was playing against, and they get 2 pick sixes, so I lost. But yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think that the Browns. Yes, they're 3-9 now. So the going into the position to potentially, you know, take a quarterback, and the conversation will be about Shedeur Sanders. I don't think that's realistic. I mean, if he wanted to come to Cleveland, I'd be open to the possibility because he can throw the ball, and like, you know, that's fine. But at this point, I don't hate the idea of Jameis Winston coming back. I've brought up the Kirk Cousins possibility. Kirk Cousins has gone into the tank in the last couple of weeks. I think he had a 4 interception game against the Chargers on Sunday. So, I don't hate the possibility of bringing back Jameis Winston and then maybe, you know, taking a developmental quarterback in like the 2nd or 3rd round. But I don't think that a Cam Ward, I don't think a Shedeur Sanders, I don't think if it's Carson Beck in the 1st round, he's been up and down. If it's a Jalen Miller, I don't think any of those guys are going to come in right away and are going to be the savior of this franchise when you need a new quarterback. So I think a bridge option and seeing how this thing runs next season, and if it's a bad season next year, then there's much better quarterback talent potentially, like an Arch Manning potentially in 2026 or even 2027 if you want to look that far down the line. Like, I don't think it's worth it to go into that. So it's like, if you think you have an offensive line, a beat on an offensive line prospect, or a Luther Burden, or somebody else in the skill position realm, because, yeah, pretty much Elijah Moore is not under contract. Amari Cooper is gone. You have Cedric Tillman. Can you rely on him? They need playmakers. And they also got to address the elephant in the room is like, hey, they got to figure out how to run the ball. Because, I mean, Jerome Ford was the leading rusher for the Browns. The Browns only ran it 23 times. They threw it 58. And this was a game where it was back and forth the whole game. Like, this was not a sustainable approach. This was a very Ken Dorsey called game. And like, listen, like, am I mad that they lost? Of course I'm mad. Like, you hate to lose games, and you hate to be, and it's just, but I like the fact that this team has shown a ton of fight and a ton of energy behind a guy like Jameis Winston, and you go in a nationally televised game for the 2nd week in a row, and you perform very well. I mean, this team, I got to get the numbers in front of me here in a second. The Browns went for 552 offensively. They were 9 of 19 on third down. They almost had a 50% conversion. Like, just remember how bad this offense was. I saw a stat. I think it was Zach Jackson, the beat writer for the Browns for The Athletic. And he said Jerry Jeudy in weeks 5, 6, and 7 had 1 catch each week. If you can do the math, for you math people, this isn't very hard math. 3 catches in 3 weeks. I think he had 9 tonight. He's had 35 or some odd catches since that point in week 7. And here we are in week 13, and they're putting up 28 first downs. Like they're doing historic stuff offensively. Jameis Winston's almost passing for 500 yards of total offense. And yeah, he threw 3 interceptions, 2 of them pick sixes. Okay. You get a better draft pick. You looked entertaining. You didn't shit the bed on Monday Night Football. Yeah, you've got a short week and you've got to go play the red hot Pittsburgh Steelers at 9-3, who you just beat. But there's a couple things that need to be addressed. Number one, I think we can dismiss the Kevin Stefanski is gone question. It's been dismissed by multiple outlets. This team has shown a ton of fight. Yeah, they're not winning. But the tone of this season was really set with the quarterback situation, and I don't think that was 100% on Kevin Stefanski. So if you want to bring back Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, that's fine, okay? And we can run this thing back next year. But I think they're going to need – they could go with Jameis Winston. They could bring in a veteran quarterback, load up the room. Maybe you take a quarterback. But what I think they need to do, no matter what draft pick that they get, I think one thing that they need to address is, the offensive line, which is very important. I think they've got to fire Dickerson, their new offensive line coach. It's like pass blocking has just been a joke. Jed Wills is not going to be there. I don't know what they do with them. They've got to address the offensive line. They've got to figure out a way to get that thing working and figure out getting back to Kevin Stefanski's offense and running the football. And if that means firing Ken Dorsey, I'm totally fine with that too. Listen, it's fun to throw for 500 yards, but when you're doing that with Jameis Winston, you knew these interceptions were going to come. You knew that this was going to happen. So if you guys are sitting around just trying to rage over the fact that, hey, he threw 3 interceptions, he threw 2 pick sixes, this guy is historically a roller coaster. He's fun, but he's a roller coaster. And this is what they've got because they bet on Deshaun Watson. They're taking chances on veteran guys and hoping that they perform. This is exactly what happened with Joe Flacco, except it led to a lot more wins last year. It was a completely different offense. They changed the offense, and then they stuck with Deshaun Watson until he got hurt. So that's really what this is. The defense, came up with some turnovers, and then Denzel Ward went out of the game. They were able to get a stop to make it 34-32. I thought that maybe Deshaun Payton calling a timeout to then kick a field goal right before the 2-minute warning was going to be an issue. It didn't end up mattering. But it's just nice to see that this team is actually performing and, not showing up flat. The New Orleans game was really a dark cloud for this team and made me question where this thing was going. But then they win on a short week against the Steelers. They show up in this game. We'll see how they look in Pittsburgh on a short week again. They still got to go to Miami, which will be an interesting game too. But yeah, the main takeaways from this game, really, for anybody who is watching, you need to figure out what your quarterback situation is. I don't think the quarterback of the future is in this draft. If you're a Browns fan, I just don't think that that's the case. I honestly think that you should do whatever you can to convince Jameis Winston to come back, and I think he wants to stay. You give him a chance next year to see where he is. Maybe you take a flyer on if one of these higher level quarterbacks, and you can sort of groom them a little bit. Maybe that's what you do. But I just don't think putting a top 10 pick in somebody like a Cam Ward or whoever, or Shedeur Sanders, if you somehow figure out a way to get it. I just don't think that's worth it. So, yeah, but all in all, fun game. I really think that this team will be fun to watch the rest of the season. They're not going to the playoffs. We knew that. So, win or lose, this wasn't going to really matter in the big picture of things. Really what you're thinking about is guys are going to start really playing for their jobs, and some of these people are going to be coaching for their jobs. That's really what this is. But yeah, it's there's some areas on this team that do need to get fixed, and there's going to be some change going into next season. But hey, had a good time watching this game. It was very entertaining. So that's Brown's thoughts. We'll Brown Steelers tic-tac-toe. Hi, Dad, if you're watching. We get to do that again. That'll be fun in Pittsburgh. And yeah, this will be an interesting wind down of the season here for the Cleveland Browns. Anyway, I will talk to you guys real soon. Bye-bye.